Hello, my name is Wanda Luttrell and I'm the teen rep at the Beaufort Sugar Hill branch. Today we will be making Halloween lanterns. For this craft, you will need tissue paper and Halloween colors, an empty plastic jar with lid, Mod Podge, black crafting paint, a foam brush, Velcro, scissors, a hot glue gun, pipe cleaners, and a battery-operated tea light. First, you will decide what type of creature you would like to make out of your empty jar. Today I will be making a jack-o'-lantern. To start with, you will take the lid and you will paint it any color you want. Today I'm going to be painting it black. You will just use your foam brush and a fairly thick coating of paint to paint the lid. Make sure that you get the sides. Once you have the lid all painted, you will set it aside. It could take up to an hour to dry, depending on how large the lid is. Next, you will take your jar, and I'm going to be using the orange tissue paper, and you're going to cut strips that are just slightly longer than your jar. And then using another foam brush, you will paint your jar completely in Mod Podge. If you don't have Mod Podge, you can use some white glue that has been diluted with some water. And you will just put a good layer of Mod Podge around the whole jar. Once you have the jar completely covered in Mod Podge, you will start by laying your tissue paper on. And you don't want to go to the very top of the jar because remember you want to be able to screw the lid back on. You will just lay the tissue paper on the jar and just smooth it out as best you can. And you will lay your next piece of tissue paper down. If there's a little overlap, do not worry about that. You just want to start by getting all the jar completely covered. Once you have the last strip of tissue paper on, you can take a look at your jar and see if there's any spots that you missed or any places where there's some tears. And you can tear off just a little piece of tissue paper and with some Mod Podge added onto that area. So now we're going to flip the jar over onto the bottom. And we're going to push down the tissue paper strips just a little bit. And we're going to add Mod Podge all around the bottom of the jar. Then carefully push the strips over. You can add a little bit more Mod Podge to it to make sure everything sticks well. Now you're going to flip the jar back over and you're going to completely cover it again in Mod Podge. And this will just seal the tissue paper onto the jar. You want a good coat, but you don't want to go too heavy. And don't forget to make sure you put Mod Podge all on the bottom also. Mod Podge dries clear, so you'll have a good view of your orange. Once you have everything Mod Podged, you will put the jar upside down and let it dry for about an hour. Your jar will look similar to this once it is dried. The next part of making your lantern will be to draw the face onto the jack-o'-lantern. And for that I will be using the black craft paint. And you can create the face however you would like. There is my jack-o'-lantern. Next we will finish the lid. If you do not plan to carry your lantern around, you do not need to do anything. But if you like to carry it with you while you're trick-or-treating, you will need to glue on a pipe cleaner. You could also use a piece of ribbon or a glow stick If you're going to use a glow stick, I would not glue it on until right before you're going to leave the house to make sure you get the most light out of it. This is where you will use a hot glue gun, and you're going to put just a couple dots of glue on top of the lid, one on either side. You will then bend the pipe cleaner or whatever material you're using, and you're going to hold it down in these dots of glue for a few minutes until they stick on. Once they have dried somewhat, you can add a little bit more glue to make it very sturdy. Once they have dried, it will be sturdy, just like this. Next, we are going to add a little piece of Velcro to a battery-operated tea light. Make sure you put the Velcro away from where you will turn the light on and off. Next, we will stick it into our lantern, and you will push down a little bit, and this will make sure the light will stay in the center. Now you can put on your lid, and you are all ready to go trick-or-treating with your Halloween lantern. Now, I made a jack-o'-lantern with this one, but you can make anything you would like, such as a ghost, a black cat, or a Frankenstein.
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine, Teen Services Librarian for the Gwinnett County Public Library System, and now it's time to make some yummy treats using pretzels and candy melts. For our first creation, let's make some pumpkins. To make these, we need orange candy melts, green M&Ms or chocolate candies, and mini pretzel twists. We also need a microwave-safe container for the melts, a fork, and a tray with some wax paper. We're going to start with our orange candy melts. You'll pour them into your microwave-safe dish. I want a darker orange and will add some red to my orange. Once you have them in the dish, you will then melt according to the directions on the package. Once melted, we're ready to start making. But first we'll need to set out some green candies and a handful of pretzel twists. Now we'll take a pretzel and drop it into the orange candy melt. Using a fork, make sure it gets completely covered and then scoop the pretzel up. Try your best to remove the excess candy by gently shaking the fork back and forth or tapping it on the side of the container. After that's done, lay it down onto the wax paper and add a green candy at the top of the pretzel in the divot for the stem. You want to do this step fairly quickly because it needs to be done before the candy melt hardens. Repeat this process until you've made as many candy pumpkins as you want. Let the candy melts have time to completely harden before arranging or putting in a container or bag to store. You can speed up the hardening process by placing them in the refrigerator or freezer. Next, we'll use candy melts and pretzel sticks to make spider webs. To make these, we need a tray with wax paper, black gel icing, and a disposable pastry bag, or you can use a sandwich bag like me. We'll also need white candy melts or white chocolate and pretzel sticks. For For each spider web, we need 8 pretzel sticks, and we'll arrange them in a star pattern like this. You'll do this for as many webs as you want to make. Before starting the next step, you need to place your white candy melts into your bag and melt in the microwave following the directions on the package. Once melted, we can start making the webs. If you're using a sandwich bag, you'll cut a small amount off one corner. The first thing you want to do is place a decent amount of melted candy in the very center to give it a good base. Next, you'll make circles or rings around the center. My first one did not turn out super great, so I'm going to let the candy melt cool a little before starting the next one. My melted candy was very hot and very liquidy. If this is the case with yours, let it cool before making the rings. Alright, my next ones look much better. Now we want these to cool completely and harden before adding our spider with the gel icing. Adding the spider is optional, but once the candy has hardened, we can add a spider to the center with the gel. It was hard to make the legs with the gel tube, so I used a toothpick to dab legs onto my spiders. The webs are sort of fragile and break easily when moving, so be careful when picking up and arranging.